We have several major announcements by Tesla this weekend that are about to really change the game. First, Tesla AI announced all cars produced at Giga Texas are now using FSD unsupervised. Yes, unsupervised, to deliver cars from the end of line to the logistics lot. Over 50,000 driverless miles already, and they dropped several videos to show this off. Second, the tariff war with China is now full steam ahead. While President Trump exempted a list of technologies and chips, the tariff at now of 145% on China is still very devastating. China responded by suspending exports of a wide range of critical minerals and magnets. We'll review what Elon said and how this might affect Tesla. We'll also watch how companies like EOS Energy can help the U.S. with their U.S.-made battery systems. Jeff Lutz, with decades of supply chain experience, is here with us today to break this down. And finally, Tesla dropped the long-awaited new Cybertruck. This is a long-range but rear-wheel drive only and has much less features to get the price down to $62,000. Will this be a runaway winner? Jeff, thank you very much for joining me. Perfect person. You understand so much about supply chain. I really want to understand how this is going to affect the U.S. and Tesla.
Hey, Herbert. Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to going through it. And I would just say that I think there's a way for this to turn into a positive direction. But right now, I would say there's definitely a lot of issues with the approach that we're taking, and there's a lot of really not so great information out in social media. The great thing about social media is it's free speech. People are allowed to speak, say what they want. But when it comes to some of these situations where there's some definite need for specialty and understanding in terms of how these products are made and what the implications are of tariffs, I would say that it really narrows down in terms of really good information sources. So hopefully we can help on some of this.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Jeff. We'll get there. First, we'll start for some news that came out just this morning. It looks like that Elon here said this, for the first time, there will soon be a generalized, pure AI solution to full self-driving, just cameras and a Tesla AI chip with Tesla AI software. This weekend, Tesla AI dropped 3 videos showing that in Giga Texas, when they make a car there, a Model Y or a Cybertruck, it now uses what they're calling FSD Unsupervised to deliver cars from the end of line to the outbound logistics lot. They're saying now that over 50,000 driverless miles have been accrued between California and Texas factories so far. We'll watch that video, and also they showed Model Ys autonomously navigating a 1.4 mile trip on a road shared with pedestrians, cars, semi-trucks, construction equipment, and more. Let's take a look at what that looks like here. I'll take the music out. What do you think about this video, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, this is Tesla taking those necessary steps to gain confidence. And, this is really showing that you're taking, the asset at the end of the manufacturing line. It has peak value add to it. The car does not get more expensive to repair at this point in the time in the manufacturing process. So to have this kind of confidence, which they should, quite frankly, we're going to unsupervised in a couple of months, and it's driving people today. To me, this is just adding. This is how Tesla AI starts entering the factory. Tesla AI is entering the back of the factory, and it's going to make its way into deeper into the factory and start really helping out in a number of different areas to really inform what's going on in the manufacturing process. But this is automating the manufacturing process with cameras and with Tesla's AI chip and software that's already inside of the vehicle today. So no external apparatus is needed, no additional CapEx, removing labor out of the operation. So, I mean, we've talked about this, the fact that they've been able to expand it so rapidly, put it on all the vehicles, tells you how quickly that they can use this to gain productivity. It's great.
Yeah, I think when they called it FSD unsupervised, right, that is a new term. That means that these cars might, and very likely, if they called it that, is installed with FSD unsupervised instead of FSD version 13, beta or supervised. That's what it could be. So that means that it could mean that we're about to get FSD unsupervised. And you can see here, these are shared roads, public. Well, maybe not public, but shared roads. And it's 1.4 mile trip. So, it's not just this, contained area that
Right.
that they're pretty comfortable with. They know it's got everything it needs to have. Yeah. And then this is, so that's that. And then you've got not only the Model Y, and that's a 1.4 mile trip, but you got the Cybertruck. Now they're going through a different route, 1.6 miles, traversing beneath one of America's fastest highways, emerging through a steep 17% grade to reach their destination. That music out. Yeah, the Cybertruck goes through a different thing with a tunnel. Some people are saying that it's actually harder to go through a tunnel than it is just normal roads. I don't know if you know anything about that.
I'm sorry, Herbert. You cut out for a bit.
Yeah. Some people think that it's harder to go through a tunnel than just normal roads.
I'm not sure in terms of that being more difficult or not. I just, from a factory perspective, this is amazing. There's no other product in the world that basically puts itself on the shelf. This is essentially, during the manufacturing process. Okay, I'm done. Let me go put myself on the shelf, so I'm ready for distribution. There's nothing like it. And the only next step, from here is these cars just leaving, being purchased online and then just turning themselves on and driving to the owners, right? So when does that start happening? That's a logical next step as well from Tesla's various delivery centers.
Okay, let's get to the tariffs. This is a lot of big things happened this weekend. Elon replied a couple times, so we'll take a look at what he's saying here. But first, you've got, here we go. Remove this, put this up here. So here's the full list of items. Okay, President Trump exempted from the new reciprocal tariffs. And then here is this list that you provided. It's quite lengthy, of course, but the exempted smartphones. Thank you. I'm sure Apple lobbied for that. Computers, computer parts, monitors, semiconductors. That's a big deal. We'll talk about that. Flat panel displays and so forth. What do you think about this list?
Well, let's explain what happened. So there's a series of escalations over the past week going back and forth. Really awful negotiating tactics on both sides. Nobody engaging in a conversation, just pure escalation back and forth. And we ended up with somewhere between 84 and 104%, inbound to China, then inbound to the U.S. up to 145%. And what the president and his team did here was to exempt certain product families from the 145% stacked tariff. But if you destack that tariff, there's Section 301, there's Section 232 sector tariffs in there, there's fentanyl tariffs in there. So when you destack everything, those things on that list are still getting a 20% tariff inbound. That is a staggering tariff level to put on those products. So, and I put a post out early in the weekend, Saturday morning, and as soon as I saw the exemptions, and I just said, I don't know if I want to get into a long post and set of exchanges on this, but I knew that these residual tariffs were still on and that they're still just staggering. The 145% was literally an instantaneous trade embargo. Like nobody's going to import stuff. Things are just going to stop. And that's all that was. And that's why I posted about that. It's basically a trade embargo when you start putting product up at the, when you want make it 1,000%. Bringing it down to 20%. So let's just step into it. So when we're at 145 in the mineral restrictions, I said, look, this is essentially a trade embargo. This is a disaster. It's absolute unmitigated disaster. And really want to, this is the thing we used to do with my teams, and just in spite, when we had an issue and we were trying to assess the severity of it, we wanted to look at, okay, well, how often or how quickly is information changing? Is this something that we're going to talk about, every 6 hours, every 12 hours? When are we getting on the phone to go through the issues? And if they were that serious, we were getting up in the middle of the night every few hours, and we were getting a quick status update depending on what time zone we were in. On these tariff issues, I mean, I think the negotiations should be measured in hours and minutes in terms of how we're managing these situations. Because what's happening right now in reality, and this is part of the problem, is that the real operators in these situations, they're in a bad position. They cannot go on TV, they cannot go public in terms of what's happening, because then they're giving up negotiating leverage with whomever they're negotiating with on the other side to do business in the tariff environment. So they can't do that. They can't upset their local host government by speaking out against the local host government, whether it's a U.S. company speaking out about the U.S., a U.S. company speaking out about China, and then vice versa. They can't do that. So they're in a bad position. But the reality on the ground is, between these tariffs that are still on, remember, there's still 20% tariffs that are still on. There's still sector tariffs that are still on. Autos, steel, auto parts, ex-USMCA, lumber. There's still all these sector tariffs on. There's still, out of China, there's a 20% fentanyl tariff that's still on. People posting on my account of like, well, don't you care about fentanyl? Care about all of it. The question is how do you manage it to get effective results? So you get the desired results of what, I mean, make it 1,000%. My point is, just make it 1,000%. If you want to do that, the 20 tariffs over 20%, it destroys several categories of products that you can't make them. And I don't know who that is helping in terms of, okay, for example, a 20% tariff on smartphones coming in, for example, that's going to blow out the budget series of smartphones. So think about all the different, that's a lot, it's many tens of millions of phones that are sold in the U.S. are pay-as-you-go or entry series phones. That's where most of the volume is. Then you step up to the mid-tier devices, and those also have very low gross margins from a manufacturing perspective as well. If you tack on a 20% tariff, which basically is, this thing comes in, I got to take the transfer value of that product and I have to give 20% more to the host government that's where I'm importing. You know, that's where they get blown away. And people say, well, they're just going to pass along to the consumer. Well, that consumer is very sensitive from a cost perspective. So every situation is going to be different. And so when people say like, well, tariffs are a tax on the consumer, well, no, they're all the above. They sometimes they hit the consumer. Sometimes they're a tax on the company that's making the product or importing it, the importer of record. And then sometimes it's a tax on the exporting company, and it causes uptime utilization issues back home. So this is causing problems in China. There's no question about it. But the question is what's the right tariff level, how to apply it, and how would you go about solving this problem? And I keep coming back down to understand what you can make today at time equals zero, and understand what the schedule is to bring up that capability in the U.S. and be competitive. And if you have the capability in the U.S. and you can be competitive, you should tariff. If we're going to be able to bring down other trade barriers and get more competitive, more open trade, and we are being mistreated, which we are, there's no question about it. So there's no question in my mind that there's a problem to solve here. It's more of the execution and how it's being managed. And the specific issue is tariffing things that we don't know how to make. As soon as you tariff something you don't know how to make, you convert that into basically a tax. And you either have the capacity to pay the tax, or you just don't buy as much of that product, or you shut the product line down. And that's the situation we're in now. And I even heard the president, as we're recording this morning, talk about now there's some relief coming for autos. Of course, there's going to be relief coming for autos. This is a disaster for U.S. automakers. This is an absolute disaster for U.S. automakers, because first off, many of their models now cost 25% more to import. And you can say, well, yeah, don't move all your final assembly out of the U.S. Got it. This is something that took Tesla a decade to engineer, to figure out how to and build the supply chain and build the engineering capability to make a vehicle profitably in the U.S. And right now, if you're a U.S. car manufacturer, if you're a Stellantis or a GM, and about half of your vehicles or more are imported, and then the content of the vehicles that you actually final assemble in the U.S. probably have less than 50% content that was made in the U.S. That's all getting tariffed unless it was a USMCA assembly. It's getting tariffed. They're getting a lot of parts out of Asia coming into those products. So it looks like, from what I'm hearing this morning, there may be some relief coming on autos. We'll see what happens later in the day. But essentially, what happened in the last week: escalation, no conversation. You could have made the tariffs 1,000%. It wouldn't matter. The big thing we haven't talked about, we need to get into next, are the rare earths and what this means to products. So I'll pause here for a minute.
No, thank you so much, Jeff. I mean, this is I know that you're getting phone calls from top level executives, and you're saying that they can't speak out, but it's important that somebody with actual experience say something, because regular people like me think, oh, they took away the 145%. Great, now everything's good. It's not. There are certain products that are being devastated at this point, so that's fine. Hopefully they will resolve this, but every day that goes by, it's going to be a real issue. So of course there's retaliation. So now the big one, and I want to understand from you, is whether or not this is a big deal or not. But China's retaliated by saying by suspending exports of a wide range of critical minerals and magnets. They're threatening to choke off supplies of components central to automakers, aerospace manufacturers, semiconductor companies, and so forth. Shipments of the magnets essential for assembling everything from cars and drones to robots and missiles have been halted in many Chinese ports, while the Chinese government draws a new regulatory system. This could be pretty devastating. Now, Elon did reply saying, important to note that what matters is the ability to refine refined rare earth elements, which are not actually meaningfully rare, and manufacture magnets for use in electric motors. People understandably tend to think that rare earth mineral deposits are what's scarce, given the name. That is false. They're everywhere. But it's the refining of it that matters. As with lithium, what China has that others lack is the heavy industry of refining the minerals. And in fact, just a few days ago, Tesla's lithium refinery came online and started production already. What's your thoughts on how important that retaliation is, Jeff? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I've been going through this for a couple of months. When last year, when China started with germanium mineral restrictions, and they kept increasing these mineral restrictions, the ones that they put on over the last week or so on a number of critical rare earths. This is if you make something electronic and it's got anything that moves inside of it, this is trouble. And I don't know how else to explain it, but if you look at some of the rare earths involved with making magnets, and you think of, so let's talk about this for a bit. China responded, back and forth with the tariff levels. We got to this absurd levels, fine, but when they put the rare earth minerals on, I'm not going to name them all, but the two that really are killers. So the neodymium used in magnet productions as that material, and dysprosium. Those two are, they're super critical. And you can say, like, okay, well then make non-rare earth magnets. Well, that takes time. There's performance trade-offs. There's size trade-offs as well. And so with the specific rare earths that they put restrictions on, remember, this is what's not being talked about, I think, properly in the social media world. People think that, like, oh, we're just importing these things from China to build stuff here, and there's a restriction. No, the way that the restriction, yes, those are restricted, but they're also restricted if it's going to Vietnam to be used by a U.S. company's contract manufacturer to be made into a U.S. product, that is being restricted as well. So here's the game that's being played. Most companies go through and they do supply chain resiliency, and they look at where do we need safety stocks. They work with their supply base on safety stock level. Rare earths is one area that's always looked at. So what companies have they literally have safety stock levels of these minerals I spoke about at the raw material level, and some built at other built up stages. So that's the stage we're at now. who's got safety stock and what level. And then that's gonna comprise how much screaming you're gonna hear over the next couple of days. So the reason why everybody's not completely, you know, in a panic, and there's not, you're not seeing literally fire from the sky, is there are levels of safety stock that are out there, but those are going to burn through really quickly. And the question is how long does this take? And what are the costs of those minerals on the other side? Now that they've become quote unquote even more rare, again, the extracted version of them. So what Elon is saying is totally correct. There's plenty supply of this on Earth. The issue is the extraction and the refining capability for these minerals. So let me give you a couple of metrics. So this for rare earth magnet production, there's a couple of facilities that have started in the U.S. There's about 3 or 4. In fact, there was a 5th that was starting up in Kentucky, and they were found to be actually importing rare earths from China, and they were, that was stopped. So there's about 4 right now, and they each do about 1,000 to 3,000 metric tons per year of magnet production. You're like, okay, well, that sounds like a lot. That's 4 of them, maybe 10 to 15 metric tons. But with China has about 85 to 90% of the capacity, and they're doing about 250,000 metric tons. Okay, so we're doing 10,000 metric tons, and they're doing about 250,000 in China. And each product has different usage requirements. It can change dramatically, but China is doing about 85 to 90% of the world's supply at 250,000 metric tons. And our 4-ish or so facilities in the U.S. are doing about 10 to 12,000 combined. You can see where the problem is. And I think China's taking that 250 to 400K, 500K over the next year and a half. They're continuing to increase their capacity. And just to put it in a little bit more perspective, the biggest refiner in China does about 25,000 metric tons per year. There's just one supplier in China does about 25,000. This one supplier does about 2.5 times more than the entire U.S. combined. The other thing to think about this in quantity, I think there's, again, I rattled off about 4. Maybe there's a handful of really, really smaller other ones in the U.S. In China, there's about 300 of these suppliers just working on rare earth magnets, refining, construction, distribution of them, but 300 to our handful of companies here. So there's a long way to go. And anybody who's out there that's saying like, oh, this isn't someone's going to figure this out, this is a problem. It's impacting companies right now. The first way it's impacting companies right now is when the export restrictions went on. I don't think people realized that China was going to control the downstream activity of the export restriction all the way to the source product. And I think that tripped up some people that thought that they may have been okay in this. So this is causing a lot of confusion, all the different borders, all the different customs controls. Everybody's on edge. They're trying to figure out workarounds. There are factory lines that are impacted right now. And all I can say is the rare earths are a huge problem. And again, it is refining capacity. It is available capacity and distribution. And it is about the fact that from a defense, and this is used, where are these used? They're used in the defense industry. They're used in drones. They're used in smartphones. They're used in electric vehicles. They're used in just so many different things. Almost everything with the electromechanical moving part has some sort of magnet in it. And the reason you need these minerals is these minerals aid in the miniaturization and cost structure of these magnets. Dysprosium is used as kind of a doping element, an additive process for thermal stability, for example. And how do you prevent a magnet from being demagnetized or extend that period of time or energy for a magnet to be demagnetized? That mineral is used for that. So yes, and so let's talk about Tesla for a bit. I'm sure Tesla's got safety stock. We know Tesla was working on motors. Remember in the Investor Day presentation, they were working on a new electric motor that would be rare earth free. using either some sort of ferrite magnets or some other set of materials. So very smart of the Tesla team to be working on this. The way I would kind of summarize this at this point is, yes, we need to step up and drive production of this in the United States. You usually do that by incentives. You usually do that by local investing and co-investing and deregulation. That's the way you do it. You don't cut off the supply. You don't allow the supply to be cut off. So China knows this. China knows. So I keep going back to this Paratoo's analogy that our Secretary of Treasury keeps talking about in terms of trade surplus, and that's true. We're at a huge deficit, and they're exporting to us, so we have the advantage there. But when it comes to these rare earths, it's the exact opposite, and it's even worse than holding a pair of twos. So we have to get really quick resolution on rare earths. We need tariff de-escalation. We need tariff application. The other countries will respect us if we have some level of tariff on. I don't think that's a problem. Where the respect issues, I think, come in is us tariffing things. When I say respect, who cares if they respect us or not? It's important that the other side of the negotiation understands that you know what you can make and you know what you need to make your products. And for us to allow these rare earths to go on this level of restriction. And by the way, we've been hitting China for the last year. We've been hitting them on semiconductor equipment at all different levels. We've been hitting them on EVs. So we've certainly been, on the other side of this as well and driving it. And a lot of this stuff is appropriate. Like I said, there are issues to go after. There's no, I would say, innocent actor in this situation. It's just more of the approach. This to me, this has been boiling over even before the president took office with what we were doing on semiconductor and other things. And now it's just really come to a head. And now we've done this rapid escalation, de-escalation. But these rare earths being cut off is a much bigger story. I don't know if the media doesn't know how to tell this story or explain it, but it's actually a really big issue, and it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that information. Lots of new information I did not know about. So in addition to the rare earth, batteries also were not part of the exemption list. That seems to be a big deal still. We'll see what happens.
Very confusing.
Like you said, President Trump is about to hopefully, exempt some automakers, hopefully Tesla as well. But this is why it's so important to have batteries made here in the U.S. We know that Tesla is doing that now too. Another company is doing that is U.S Energy. We've covered them before. They came out and said, we still believe we can build things in America. The CEO was on Fox News, talked about reshoring, AI, the zinc-based battery systems built with 91% domestic content. So it looks like that EOS will be fine. Let's watch the video here.
U.S Energy. It's a battery company that moved their production from China. They had some production there, moved it to the United States about 5 years ago. Joe, I saw you earlier on the Business Channel. Welcome. It's great to have you with us today. So give me a sense of, you were doing some business in China, and then you brought it back here to the United States. What would you say to other businesses about what's different in those two experiences? And do you think it's better doing it here, and why?
Look, starting off, why I think strategically it's a lot better for us because it allowed us to innovate a new technology and build partnerships with local suppliers and really get an ecosystem of companies around us that still believe we can build things in America. I think from an innovation standpoint, it allowed us to move a lot faster because we were all closer to one another and could iterate quickly. And now when you look at, having a simple supply chain, 91% in the U.S., it allows us to move faster to market.
So when I think about other big companies, think about Apple, for example, that has been pretty beat up in the market lately. They make 90% of the iPhones in China. Obviously, this is a huge issue. Every one of us pretty much has an iPhone in our pocket. So they started to diversify some of their production. Some of it is done in India, about 10%. What would you say to them? And do you think it's even possible for them to move their business to the U.S., given what you've learned?
Look, I'm not familiar with their supply chain per se. What I can say is that it's going to take time. It's a process. When you look at, we started this we made the decision to bring production back to the U.S. in late 2018, started producing in 2019. Much smaller company going through an innovation cycle to ramp up into production and come up with our production line. But it takes work to be able to do it, and it's going to take investment to be able to do it. What I can say is the spirit of the American dream is still alive and well here in the Mon Valley outside of Pittsburgh, where you can go out and build a workforce, and you've got plenty of people that still believe we can build things in America. You just got to work at it.
In terms of AI and the changing needs of factories and manufacturing, how is that going to impact the workers that you now employ in Pennsylvania?
Look, it's an opportunity for us because the number one need for AI data centers is energy, and our employees are building a product that fits perfectly next to AI. We can help regulate the efficiency of systems. We can help top off demand if there's supplier demand inconsistencies. So when you look at what our employees do, it's providing a product that's going to enable that.
Okay.
Hey, Herbert,
let's pause there.
This is great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah, appreciate it. Tell us more about EOS. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been following EOS for a couple of years now, and yeah, Joe's feedback is, I think, what the president and his administration are hearing a lot of, which is we can move stuff back here. It just takes time. So if the incentives weren't there, and I can speak to this firsthand from doing this about a decade ago and moving manufacturing back here for smartphones. When the incentives aren't there, it's nearly impossible to do. It doesn't mean you need free money from the government. What you need is deregulation so that you can operate the same way that you can operate abroad, that you can operate here. You can do it safely and so forth. So Joe's feedback on we can do it, it takes time, is what I think the president is hearing right now. And I believe he's getting a lot of feedback, especially from the auto manufacturers and the consumer electronics manufacturers, smartphones, computers, and so forth. I see a lot of memes. I see a lot of things on X about, we'll never be able to do some of the stuff here. We can absolutely manufacture products, electronics in the U.S. Here's my advice. Number one, we have to be selective. We have to be strategic about what we want to build. We obviously don't want to make T-shirts and shoes here, in my opinion. It's not a national security concern. But if we're talking about the electronics that are so close and so akin to what would be built up into the chest and the body of a humanoid robot, if you start thinking about smartphone and tablet, there is some advantage to us of bringing some of that. What you would do it, the way you would do it is you wouldn't say, like, I'm going to bring back all 7 tiers of the supply chain. This is why I see these hyperbolic reports coming out of these analyst firms or major papers like Wall Street Journal of its billions and billions of capex, which, by the way, that these companies own overseas. It's not like it's incremental. They own this capex overseas. But anyway, that's beside the point. You would do it in layers. You'd have a logical conversation with the host government about what regulatory environment you would need and what it would enable this level of production. You would start at the outer tier of production at final assembly. You'd start at distribution and you'd start moving back in layers. Does it take does everything take 5-6 years? No, of course it doesn't take 5 or 6 years. But what you would do is you can get assembly production going up pretty quickly in the matter of a year or two. And that is a big impact to labor, production, and local distribution of your product. And then as you work through that deregulatory environment, as you work through the proper incentive structure, as you work through the labor issues, remember, it's not just getting enough people to work on the lines, but it's also getting enough people that have the tooling acumen to do really high precision tooling. There's a difference in the tooling that's involved to make the tools are the things that, if you think about the mold that the plastic and resin materials go into, or you think about how your steel or aluminum are formed, you think about these jobs where these tools are made. We have not been making tool makers over the last decade or two. And what China has been ramping that up. So there's a famous Tim Cook video of him talking about that. That is true. So we're going to have bottlenecks along the way. So the way to responsibly do this is to do it in layers and not say, here's the tariff wall, jump over it, and you've got to figure it out right away. that is what's creating a lot of the chaos that we have right now. So just one more comment back to EOS really quick. I know we're running short on time. This company is over 91% locally sourced here. All of right now, the stationary battery manufacturers are trying to figure out in the U.S. how to bring back battery production into the U.S. so they can do it here and also be rare earth free. So there's a bit of a road that many of these companies have to go through. I would say Tesla is probably, from a mass scale perspective, in the lead, driving that conversion with what they're doing. But there's a road where EOS has the whole cell build up, final call it pack, and then cube into this final assembly. That's all manufactured here, in the U.S. and very highly automated process. You saw in the drone videos going through the factory. And they're about to scale here pretty quickly. And again, it's serving these really hot sectors in terms of data center and grid level storage, where we need a lot of redundancy and capability.
Thank you again, Jeff. I hope that very important people are watching this. You just dropped a masterclass of information here, so some of it's very important for people to understand. Thank you for that. I know you know a lot about EOS, and like you said, Tesla's batteries. They've been making a lot of it here. They've been moving towards removing rare earth. They seem to have predicted that was going to happen, or knew that if this did happen, they needed to react, and they were doing it years ago. But okay, we got to go with the next big story that dropped this weekend. Was Cybertruck was actually launched. I know you own a Cybertruck, so you know how great the vehicle is. But do you think that this new vehicle is going to be successful or not? Because it looked like that they really did remove quite a bit of, oops, let me take this out. They did remove quite a number of features here. So they dropped this new Cybertruck. It's a long range, but it's a rear wheel drive, only $62,000, which is a great price point. 362 miles of range, which is very good, long range. But the bed's the same, I think, but the 7,500 pounds towing capacity. Here's what the car looks like. It's a long range. Now you can buy the all-wheel drive at 72 and the Cyber-Beast at 100,000. So it's a great range of offerings at this point. Is that going to open up a new segment? We'll play the soft tonneau cover. It does not have the rear light bar anymore, and it's totally redesigned. So, these are the things that it's lost. No filter, no air suspension, no rear light bar, standard bed with no cover included, but that's upgradable. This soft cover, for the soft cover, increases the range to 363. It's got the textile seats instead of the vegan leather, headlights without signature lamps, standard bed lights. Look at this list. I won't go through all of it at this point, but lots of kind of features dropped. Do you think that this is still going to succeed, Jeff?
Yeah, first thing I want to hit, Herbert, is there's a lot of, I would say, poor information out just about the original Cybertruck launch last year in the U.S., which is where 85% of the distribution was until Canada and Mexico were brought on very late. There's about 80,000 trucks over $100,000 that are sold in the U.S., and the Cybertruck did about 38,000 of those. So you're talking 45 or so % of all truck sales. I'm talking all combustion types, ICE, hybrid, EV, outsold Rivian R1S, outsold the Ford F-150, who have been in production for 3 years, in year number 1. So those trucks are not profitable, and they were outsold, and their 3rd and 4th year of production. Tesla's in its 1st year of production. So I think people are getting a little bit confused about installed production capacity, 125,000. That takes a period of time to get to peak capacity. You've got to get your cost structure down, okay? And I do think that we are starting to, I won't say exhaust, but when you ship that much product, when you're 45% of a segment of trucks that are sold over that period of time, there is some exhaustion. So what Tesla had to do here in terms of that price tier, they have to do 2 things. They have to move down for the North America segment and start opening it up. I don't think that, I think this, you're going to get, consumers, typical people buying this new lower truck. I think you're going to get a lot of, service and companies that need a fleet of trucks to do work promotional or work in the field, service people and so forth. I think you're going to get more of that with this 62,000 truck because they don't need the ventilated seats. They don't need vegan leather. They don't need some of these things that were in the truck. And I think this will start serving them. I'd like to see this version of the truck below 50,000. So I think Tesla, this is part of the move of get lower in terms of price structure, get the volumes up, take all the common parts that are across the 3 tiers of the trucks and start getting more volume against it so you can bring the overall cost structure down even further. I think that's the play here. This isn't, if you bought a $100,000 Cybertruck before, this isn't going to be as appealing to you the way it's configured. And again, in the Midwest and northern states, we have to have all-wheel, drive. We can't you just have rear-wheel drive in it. So this will serve a purpose. This will now start feeding a new layer of in total available market. The other thing Tesla has to do is they have to get this thing out internationally. And I love how there's all these experts on X who knows what everybody wants internationally. They know everybody's preference in the world. And the answer is they don't. So what Tesla has to do is they have to go out and test this in markets and see what the demand is like. If this year is below, I would say if this year is below 50 to 80,000, I would say, yeah, now you're starting to run into issues. Is this a product success or not? I think it's fair to question, is this a product success or not? But in year one of production, to be 45% of supply of trucks that are sold that are at this $100,000 tier, I would say that's a pretty good first year. Now they have to build off of that and introduce this lower cost version of the product and then build up the supply base, get the cost structure lower on everything, and then start going out to other countries. If the form factor doesn't work in other countries, well, then it doesn't work. But there are a lot of people importing these things in other countries that seem to like it.
Now, so far, the trust is in how smart Tesla is. They seem to do it. They know what they're doing. So we'll see. Lower price point. But like you said, I think what you said makes the most sense, which is this is not geared towards the consumer per se. This is geared towards another segmentation of people, the working class, the working businesses, and other countries. I think I just showed the video there that they launched it in the Middle East. And then, but the price point, just that alone, should also just, grow up. Whether or not this is going to take off, we'll see. Did they cut too much? I don't think so. Like you said, it's like the car is still the same vehicle. I mean, it's still amazing to drive. And it has FSD, as we saw at the beginning of the show. I mean, these things should outdo the other pieces that was missing. Long range, right? Anything about this that you would have done differently if you were to launch this?
You know what? I mean, I've looked at the specs. For me, that's a personal preference thing because I bought, the higher end version of the vehicle. Yeah. So I want all those things and I got them. So in terms of this and at 62,000, what I'd love to see is I'd love to see this below 50,000. So what has to happen with volume? What has to happen with upcoming COGS reductions? Is it the dry electrode 4680? Is that part of the solution to get us there? I think it is. So getting to that, I think, is going to be critical because what if, we get to the dry electrode 4680, they can bring the price down further, they can bring the range up. Now, all of a sudden, this is really starting to dial. And again, we're in year 2 of production. We're going up against trucks that have been in production for 4 years, and we're trying to compare Tesla year 1 to them in their 3rd year last year. So I think they're doing a pretty good job coming up the ramp curve. Is it perfect? Did we blow it out? Did we get to 70 or 80,000? No, I don't think we could have gotten to 78,000 even from a volume or a supply perspective last year. But you'd like to see it come out of the gate faster this year than what it is, and it certainly isn't. So that's certainly fair criticism. But I think this is the right step. They got to get it below 50. I think that's the key, and this thing will really remember. This thing drives itself with $99 a month FSD. This thing, it's a beautiful experience. It's really comfortable. It's really great to ride in. You feel secure. It's smooth. So I think what people are missing is with FSD on a truck like this. It's just an amazing experience. So let's see what happens.
Thank you, Jeff, multi-decade supply chain executive. Appreciate your feedback, especially on the conversation of tariffs and what's happening to the world right now and what's happening to batteries in Tesla. Thank you, everybody. Follow Jeff on his X account at the Jeff Lutz. Thanks all. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.